All right, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back and we are live still in the month of Black August. And our topic for today, land, liberation, legacy, the Republic of New Africa Revisited. Peace and blessings, Doc, how you doing?
I'm good, brother, I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Now this program, I tell you, doing research for this has really taken it from one level to another for me. Being able to see and understand. I didn't even know that Robert F. Williams was the president of New Africa at a point. So it really got very interesting, and but we're going to get into all of that. My short introduction to this is in 1968, while America mourned the assassination of Dr. King and cities burned with rage, a group of Black visionaries gathered in Detroit, not to protest, but to declare they envisioned a sovereign nation, a republic, one carved from the soil of the Deep South, where Black people could govern themselves, build their own institutions, and finally be free. They called it the Republic of New Africa. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a demand for land, reparations, for liberation, and it terrified the state. Today, we revisit this vision, not as a relic, but as a roadmap, because the questions they raised about autonomy, justice, and legacy still echo in the streets, in our schools, and in our souls. This is the land, liberation, legacy, the Republic of New Africa Revisited. So, Doc, give us your top layer, just your top layer, nothing deep, but your top layer of the Republic of New Africa.
Well, the thing is that if you're talking about the Republic of New Africa, you have to, in many ways, revisit all of these other nationalist movements, and it brings forth the idea of the different variants and strains of nationalism, be it cultural nationalism, revolutionary nationalism, and what have you. However, it's something that we've been talking about for years: breaking away, starting your own nation, electing your own political officials. It's in many ways an actualizing of Malcolm's great definition of what Black nationalism is. A situation where Black folk control the politics, the politicians, the education, the economics of their community. The Republic of New Africa was a group of individuals who actually put it into practice.
Awesome. So we're going to go to this first little video and see how they summed it up, and then we'll come back and ask you some more questions about it.
Detroit, 1968, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, PGRNA, was established by two brothers, Milton and Richard Henry, who changed their names to Gaida and Imari Obadele. They were from the Malcolm's X Society, and their goal was to internationalize the Black freedom struggle through armed self-defense, self-determination, and peoplehood. They held a Black governmental conference in Detroit in March of 1968 with 500 participants to form a provisional government for Black people who were viewed as a subjugated nation. They identified Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina as national territories. They wanted the states to relinquish their authority as a form of reparations. Their motto was "Free the land." 100 participants signed the document declaring independence from the United States. Queen Mother Moore created the name the Republic of New Africa. Robert Williams was named the president, and Betty Shabazz and Gaida were vice presidents. They purchased land in Hinds County, Mississippi, and tried to have a land celebration day, but participation dwindled from a projected 3,000 to 150. On August 18, the Republic of New Africa was attacked with the tank that was used in the raid on Jackson State. The bullhorn was used, and they were given 75 seconds to leave before tear gas canisters were launched, followed by a 20-minute gun battle where police fired 300 rounds into the house. Upon surrender, the 7 members were beaten in front of neighbors. All were charged with the murder of Police Lieutenant Skinner, who raised his head to shoot. Even members who weren't there were arrested. They were accused of being part of an international communist conspiracy that invaded the state. They were convicted in state and federal courts, even with black people on the jury.
All right. So I think what really one of the things that stood out to me, Doc, that I would like us to talk about, the connection between what they did to them and what was done to the MOVE people in Philadelphia. On the MOVE, they dropped a bomb on them, but in this instance, they brought in a tank to use against them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to put it within the context of this is the late 1960s. You know, Malcolm's gone already. And as the 60s progressed further, we see the annual urban riots, which leads to a unsubstantiated fear coming from middle America, especially the United States government, that these people are actually going to overthrow the nation in one way or another. And so it's in many ways a sign of the times, as Prince would put it. There is no level of violence that should not be utilized to suppress them. You know, you look at even the generation of the vaunted SWAT, the Special Weapons Assault Team. SWAT was actually a deal that was made by the United States government with Green Berets in exchange for them being in Vietnam for 3 years. The deal was quite simply, if you came back to the United States and worked to suppress political voice and dissent or whatever you want to, depending upon your relationship to the American geopolitical system, you would get a year shaved off of your time. So we see SWAT, you know, using horrific violence against most notably Black Panther Party for self-defense. And you're going to see other moments like this moment with the Republic of New Africa. They quite simply do not want any, from their perspective, seditious talk, treasonous activities. And make no mistake about it, if your position is the position of United States government, these individuals, Imari Obadele and his brother, they're the head of a wicked dragon, as they would put it, and they're going to try and decapitate that dragon, and that's exactly what they did.
Wow. Now, it was another thing that was very interesting to me is that their doctrine, as it was put, was the Malcolm X doctrine. What exactly is the Malcolm X doctrine?
Black independence and Black control of their institutions, of everything around them. What Malcolm was talking about in the Malcolm X doctrine, it's calling for Black folk to have what other groups have, what the Jews have, what the Polish have, what the Russians have, what white folk in general have, and that is autonomy and the right and the ability to make their own decisions about how their lives and the lives of their children would turn out.
So why is that so dangerous for Black people to have, that they would drop bombs, use tanks, kill without even a thought, for Black people to have that when others have it within this governmental system?
Well, you have to. I think that there's several reasons, several answers to that. when you get into the white mind. And one of the most prominent ones is actually going to be that the attacks upon Black folk and Black folk in general, we are a rallying point for whiteness, for white America. When you really think about what is it that the Polish, the Russians, the Irish, the Italians, all of these quote unquote new immigrants, what do they have in common? That's we can never forget and talk about them without a proper historical context. You can't forget that these are the same people who went to war in Europe against each other. When have the British and the Irish ever been friendly towards each other, except for on this side of the water? They become white in that post-World War I period. And what brings them together is, and Malcolm talked about this. Malcolm said that the first word that these new immigrants are learning when they come through Ellis Island is the word nigger. And the idea of hating niggas is going to actually be the thing that rallies them together. You know, that's who they are. So why is it that's one reason why it's a rallying point for them. Another reason for why this is a problem is quite simply that any increase in Black power signals a significant decrease in white power and white resources, the resources that are going to be doled about. So if you're interested in controlling and maintaining control, one needs to in every way prevent the organization of Black minds, the organization of Black power, Black political, Black economic power. If that's not scattered, if Black folk do not have a white mind, white power is going to be substantially compromised. And so the idea of Black folk even control, let's just talk about them controlling their schools. If we taught our own and we taught our own a Black liberation theology, think about how we would look at the world. Think about how revolutionary that would be for Black folk to be able to be in each other's company and not have their stomachs turn. You know, I was recently at a grocery store buying some items, and there's a brother, he works there at the grocery store. I've seen this brother 10, 15 times. I see him every time I go in there. He has never once acknowledged me or spoken to me. But all of the Mexican people run up to me and they talk to me and this and that. And there's an extreme difficulty that one is going to have with being Black in America, going to their schools, digesting their cultural images, their version of history, and to come out the other end feeling good about Black folk. It's not a stretch to say that the vast majority of Black folk are suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
So during this time, Doc, we're looking in the late 1960s. The civil rights movement, would you say, on a decline, and the Black power movement on the incline? Would you describe it as that?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, you have to think about that pivotal moment of 1965. 1965 is probably the most important year for that transition that you're talking about, all the way up until LBJ's presidency. He comes in 63 after Kennedy is killed. All the way up to that moment, Black folk had the exact same thing that they had when they were enslaved, and that is hope. Hope that once we get this accomplished, days will get better. Once we go free, things will get better. Once we get JFK in there and he arranges for all this legislation, which never occurred, we're going to be saved. Think about it from the standpoint of what happens when the thing that you're hoping for occurs and still you're not saved. That's what 1965 is for us. So keep in mind, Kennedy's killed in 63. LBJ signs the Civil Rights Act in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65. White folk act as if racism has finally been conquered. Watts explodes about 10 days later. So your Civil Rights Act and your Voting Rights Act meant nothing. So by mid 60s, you have a decline in the civil rights movement. And you have to remember, what is it that Dr. King and company are by and large fighting for in the South? What they're fighting for and agitating for is actually voting rights. It's not really economic power. It's not the organizing of Black folk. It's voting rights. That we're going to be able to get the vote, and you're going to be able to participate in this republic, this democratic experiment. You can't run that game on people in South Central LA, in Watts, in Chicago. They already have the right to vote.
Mm.
So what is it that they're going to get out of this? So by 1965, when Dr. King decides, he makes a very strategic error when he decides that he's going to take the civil rights movement to Chicago and confront the most powerful mayor America's probably ever seen, Mayor Richard Daley. King gets his ass kicked in Chicago. And a big part of that is that many of King's classmates at Morehouse College are on the payroll of Mayor Daley. So you see a decline in civil rights by 65. Keep in mind, it's in Greenwood, Mississippi in 1965 during James Meredith's, the continuation of his March Against Fear, that we see Willie Mukasa Ricks stand up, and Mukasa is going to change the slogan of the movement. You got to remember, the movement is still interracial in 1965. And Mukasa changes the slogan is from what do you want? Freedom. When do you want it now? To what do you want? Black power. When do you want it now? Totally drives a wedge, because once again, the movement is still interracial at that moment. And it's going to cause obvious necessary angst amongst white activists. And these white activists, and keep in mind, every activist that you can name, I don't care if you're talking about the LGBTQ movement, which is going on in the 1960s, and I don't care if you're talking about women's rights, feminism, womanism, whatever you want to name, they were all trained out of the civil rights movement. So when that movement goes away, when it fractures in 1965, these groups get heavy in what we call identity politics. They're going for theirs now. Okay, white women are talking about feminism. Okay, Hispanics are talking about brown power, the Chicano movement. Black men are talking about black power. Black women are talking about womanism. And the white boys even got their own movement. Their movement is anti-Vietnam. So by 1965, the civil rights movement, the glue that held all of these activists together, is really fraying at the edges, and they're going to fall into their own movements. So 65, you have Watts. October 15th, 1966, you have the formation of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So it's not difficult to see that by 65, the civil rights movement is in decline. And many Black folk are highly frustrated with think about it this way. Every time that they turn on their TV and they see Dr. King get whipped, and the students working with him get whipped, how do they feel? Because many of these Black folk who are in Chicago, are in Detroit, are in New York City, their roots lay in South Carolina, lay in, deep in the deep South. It's not accidental that Emmett Lewis Till, his people were from Mississippi. And these Black folk could not say anything while they were in Mississippi, but they can speak in Chicago, they can speak in Detroit, because the entire context surrounding them, they don't necessarily have to worry about being lynched individually. They have to worry about their communities being burned down by white mobs, though. But they're now speaking. So the civil rights movement, in many ways, I would put the data at 63, 64, with the assassination of King and the almost failure of the March on Washington in 63. That's where I see the decline of the civil rights movement beginning.
Wow. It's interesting that you said that after the Civil Rights Act was signed, and if I'm misspeaking, correct me, that they didn't get what they thought they were going to get once the bill was signed. They didn't get the new land of freedom or whatever They didn't become more American.
Yeah, one of the biggest incongruences that we have between Black folk and white folk is found surrounding the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Black folk understand that it's going to take time for these things to be put into effect. It's going to take some time. White folk behave the exact opposite, and they begin to celebrate like they have completely destroyed racism in America. The only ingredient that if they're talking about there's anything else that needs to be done, that ingredient is not the enforcement of legislation. That ingredient is actually patience on Black folks' part. And Black folk tired long ago of being patient. Why do we have to continue to wait? So in many ways, what you're seeing is white folks selling a bill of goods that they know, if they're thinking about it very logically, they know the system's not going to change overnight. It's not going to change that quickly. You're talking about 10, 20, 30 years. And one of the last ditch efforts to get Black folk to continue to believe in the existing system is the introduction of affirmative action. And of course, that's going to be snatched from beneath Black folk within 4 to 5 years.
So, so I just want to make sure I'm keeping this all together. So once the civil rights movement was going down and the rise of Black power, then to move us as a people away from Black power and more back to America, then that's when they gave us the what did you just call it? The
affirmative action.
Affirmative action. So affirmative action was the thing that turned us back to America.
Well, no, but you can't separate the rise of affirmative action. You can't attribute that to Black power. That is sort of the last gasp of white liberalism. The idea that Black folk will eventually be brought into the system and integrated into the system. You got to remember that Dr. King is talking about the idea of integration, if not total assimilation at times. As he gets closer to his death, he begins to realize that his optimism is not matched in any way by the realities that he's witnessing within white America. So affirmative action is actually being aimed at and being used to integrate, to force white folk to integrate their companies, to force white folk to integrate their universities and their schools. Affirmative action, despite us really resisting saying this, affirmative action was actually white folks' best attempt at reparations. And black politicians couldn't even keep that going. That was a moment where we were definitely being recruited, and the nation had sort of the last couple of gusts of wind in regards to integrating the nation, solving the race problem, but never was a part of that. This was aimed at getting you into white corporations, into white institutions. It was not aimed at what the Republic of New Africa was talking about, which is total independence from white folk. That was never discussed. That was never planned. White folk are never going to plan or support giving up any land and doling out any money to help Black folk go ahead and get a start on building their own nation, because they understand, unlike some of our people, that we are essential to white folks' existence and the continuation of their power.
So, Doc, you kind of stunned me there, but so you said affirmative action was sort of like reparations. It was a last ditch effort to get us into the boardrooms and things. So you wouldn't declare it to be a hypocritical trick like integration.
It's the same thing. Affirmative action is a movement for integration. It can't be viewed any other way. This is a means of intertwining Black folks' economic interest with white society, so that you understand that as white society goes, so does your fortunes. Look at what we're dealing with right now when we see Elon Musk and the Doge fiasco. Who lost their jobs? Mainly Black women who were working those federal government jobs in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, because their fortunes are tied to what the US government is going to do. Their fortunes are not tied to what a group like the Republic of New Africa or the Nation of Islam is going to do. And it's one of the core and key foundational things that we should talk about. And that is quite simply that, are Black folk beholden to other Black folk? Or are they beholden more to the individuals who control their employment status?
Wow. Who came up? Do you know who came up with the idea of affirmative action?
Affirmative action is first going to be mentioned in the Kennedy administration, and then it's going to. And you have to remember that much of what LBJ does, he's allowed to do because it's considered to be extending and continuing what JFK was doing. Many people allege the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and later we're going to see affirmative action. And you can't separate Richard Milhouse Nixon from any of this as well, because Nixon is going to be somewhat of a supporter of the idea of affirmative action. Nixon comes out, and you want to talk about a quote that would make you really question everything that you think about Black liberation. Nixon says, "I too myself believe in Black power." And now, of course, Nixon is talking about Black capitalism. He's talking about Black folk becoming intertwined in competing and joining white folk in building up America economically. He's not talking about what the Republic of New Africa was talking about. I'm sure Imari Obadele would probably rolled over when he heard Nixon say that.
So how do I want to phrase this? If they did not come up with affirmative action, do you believe that more of our people would have followed the Nation of Islam, would have followed the Republic of New Africa?
No, not at all. Because quite simply, what you're looking at is, and this is one of the negatives, and I hate to bring the brother's name up even, of Umar Johnson. Umar has done a lot of damage to what could have been a very good moment for the independent Black school movement. Our children were at that time, as they are now, attending, and let's just call them what they are, white schools. Schools where the educational curriculum, the policies, the punishments that are handed down are arranged and administrated by white folk or Black folk who are trying to continue and extend their employment with white folk. So what you're asking me about is the idea of, would they have separated from that? If they didn't separate during the heyday of the freedom schools or the Black Power era, they're never going to leave. And as a man thinketh, so is he. So instead of breaking away at even that moment, at a moment of political fury, you're looking at a situation where Black folk are almost like a loyal hound dog. You can't get rid of them. They're gonna continue to send you, beat their kids. You can teach them their kids whatever you want to, and deny them whatever you want to, and they're gonna continue to come.
So, Doc, what was it? What was it in the brother's mind, Imari Obadele, and was it Gadi Obadele? What was in their mind that made them think that an idea like that would actually work if the majority of our people still was facing and believing in the American concept?
Well, see, the thing is that I don't believe the majority of our people are believing in the American concept. I believe the majority of our people are just unanchored and unattached to anything that makes political sense. That they're living not just for the next day, they're living for the next moment. They don't really have a plan. They haven't sat down and thought about any of these things. So that's a part of it. But you know that if you're a true believer and you get wrapped up in a ideological belief system that anything is possible, you'll find yourself breaking away in one way or another and trying to do your own thing. That's what Obadele them did. They just broke away. I mean, it's in the fact that they broke away is a astonishing, an astounding thing that they were able to conquer the inundation of misinformation and the fact that the American educational system for Negroes basically boils down to the statement of resistance is futile. They were able to conquer that and get over that. But they also understand, and this is something that I've learned over time, is that Black folk are going to remain enslaved and chained in every way imaginable. If you're waiting for the majority, not even the masses, just a 51% majority to move with you. We have to operate from the idea that if you build it, hopefully they will come. And that's what you see them doing. Because everyone doesn't see the vision. They can't see the vision. They don't understand that those types of things.
Mm. So what happened, Doc? Because in the video, the dude was saying, 3,000 people were supposed to show up, and then it came down to only 150. Now, because he didn't, I don't know whether it was two different times or it was the same time. Now, when they dwindled from 3,000 to 150, did they get attacked when they were at the 150 at that meeting, or was this a different space and time when they got attacked with the?
I'm not sure when they actually got attacked, but as far as the dwindling numbers, I mean, you have to really think about how tenuous any liberation plan that you have for Black folk actually is. You have a better chance of liberating Black folk if you are a charismatic speaker with no organization and you're just bringing in the money. Because Black folk, there's a part of us who want to be titillated on the one end, and then also we want to be told that we're somebody. Now, the nuts and bolts of forming an organization, of trying to get people behind it, is not sexy. It's not entertaining. It's hard work at a grassroots level. And even in doing that type of hard work, one has to really wonder, how long will people continue to believe until they see some results? Because the discounting and the chumping off of Black folk in general leads them far too often to an idea of maybe they exploiting us, maybe they playing us. It's the exact same thing that happened with the Black Panther Party. When you have the counterintelligence program, they're sending out bogus communications that are telling the Panthers in Detroit, the Panthers in Chicago, Panthers throughout the nation, well, they living big out in Oakland. Huey's living up in a penthouse, such. And there's that already, that pre-existing, because you've been fed these ideas that Black folk can't be trusted, and you're Black. Okay, think about it, and I remember this in the wake of the Million Man March. What was the question? Where the money at? They raised all that money. Where that money go? And that's more you. And you don't even need a white hand involved in that for those questions. Those questions come from innate inside of the Negro's mind, because they basically are not going to trust each other. So when you're talking about a movement like the Republic of New Africa, you're going to see the falling off of a lot of individuals. A lot of people are going to become disinterested. A lot of people are going to have some ideological problems over silly things. So you're lucky. I mean, they should be applauded to be able to reach 3,000 at one time, because that's an amazing movement.
Definitely, definitely. So let's move to the well, no, before we do that, I got one more question. What was Stokely Carmichael's view on the Republic of New Africa?
Let me say this about Stokely. There was a joke that Black Power people had about Stokely. They said, did you? And the joke went like this: Did you hear what Stokely believed in? And the response was, no, I ain't talked to him today, because that brother switched almost on a daily basis. You got to remember Stokely. Oh yeah, Stokely is go back and look at when the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense tried to form a coalition, and actually Huey P. Newton gave control of the Panthers to SNCC. SNCC, the Black members of SNCC. You're talking about H. Rap Brown. You're talking about James Foreman, Stokely Carmichael, Mukasa. Huey said that that the Panthers' biggest weakness, and he's partially correct in citing this as their most significant weakness, is that it is a party that was built off of the lumpen proletariat, the brothers off the block. These brothers off the block don't have reading and writing and research skills. They don't know how. They don't have the skills to administrate a national, let alone a international organization. And the most obvious group that had that was SNCC. It's an organization of college students. So Huey actually gives control, and it's one of the things that leads to a severe break within the Panthers between Huey P. Newton and the rank and file members, because the rank and file members are saying, this is 68, and Huey's in jail, awaiting trial, if not having been sent to prison already. They're saying SNCC's day is over. If anybody should be absorbing anybody else, the Panthers should be absorbing SNCC, but that's not how Huey did it. But Stokely, he knows the Panthers are a revolutionary nationalist organization. And one of the things that you'll find a lot of revolutionary nationalists, I'm a revolutionary nationalist, we don't really jive very well with cultural nationalists. You're not going to find us speaking pig Latin. You're not going to find us running around with dashikis on and things like that. We're trying to overthrow the existing system by any means necessary. Stokely is a cultural nationalist when it benefits him. Okay, so you have situations where, go back and look at the Huey P. Newton's birthday celebration that they had. They had one in Oakland, they had one in LA, and this is where they're going to publicly debut the merger of the Panthers and SNCC. Everybody is in traditional Panther gear. H. Rap Brown has on a leather jacket and a beret. Stokely, and he's obviously doing this intentionally. Stokely's sitting up in there with a dashiki on, clearly signaling the way he sees the Panthers needing to go to become cultural nationalists. And to make matters even worse, the Panthers, and this is one of the biggest misunderstandings about the Panthers, is quite simply, the Panthers are arguably not even a Black organization. Of course, it's composed of Black members, but it could be argued that the Panthers are not Black, they're red. Meaning these brothers are at best socialist. Okay, they're reading Mao Zedong, they're reading Che Guevara, they're reading these, Fidel Castro. They're talking about international stuff, and the Panthers are the only major Black Power era organization that was forging interracial alliances. They got alliances with the Young Patriots, with the Young Lords. So it's one of my pet peeves when I see these more contemporary reiterations of the Panthers that look more like the Nation of Islam than it ever looked like the Black Panther Party for self-defense, because the Panthers were working with white folk. Make no mistake about it at all. Okay, so Stokely, it would depend on the day of the week and who he was around, to be honest with you, because Stokely is in many ways a chameleon in regards to his political ideology and what he's really thinking about.
Wow, now that's very, very interesting to hear you say that. Now you broke that down into two camps. You said the cultural nationalists, and what's the other one? Revolutionary nationalists. And the difference, the cultural nationalists, they are the ones that's about the culture, the dashikis, the Africa,
That's them weird brothers. we call them the weird brothers. That's who they are. I want to show you a photo real quickly if I can.
Okay.
Let me see what's the best way to do this.
You should be able to share screen.
Okay. I'll give you, okay, how do I do that? Go down here to, okay. Now, you want your head to be blown back? Who's this?
The mafia dude, Godfather dude.
That's Marlon Brando.
Came from Bobby Hutton's funeral, and I'm not going to stand up here and make a speech because white people. You've been listening to white people for 400 years. They said they were going to do something. They haven't done a thing, as far as I'm concerned, in re-enfranchising the black man. It's up to the individual to do something.
The brother in the front,
the government.
Front left.
Give the black man a decent place to live, a decent place to bring him.
So, you're really, when you're looking at the Panthers, you're looking at a organization that was talking about an international revolution. The Panthers are fighting against capitalism. Huey P. Newton was way ahead of his time. Newton is a genius when you're talking about overthrowing societies and what have you. And the Panthers are much less focused and emphasized upon the idea of racism and attacking white folk here in America. They're very clear. They identify their enemy and the enemy of all people as being capitalism and greed.
Wow. Well, I definitely hope those people who, when I did a program and I said that the Black Panthers were integrationalists, I got some emails.
That'll get you strung up. That'll get you strung up, brother. You should have talked to me first. Woo-woo.
Yeah, you would have thought that I said, let's worship the white man. They were upset that I had the nerve to say that.
I've had, brothers that roll up on me and say, yeah, brother, you own it, except for. It's always the Panther thing with the idea, and I'm like, I am telling you that what y'all are recreating is not who they were. Right. Not at all. Right. Elaine Brown, who becomes the only female head of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Elaine Brown, I brought her out to my school to lecture, and she tells this joke, and it's talking about how, how white folk can get, especially white women, they fetishize black folk, black men, and You can't, I mean, if you go back and you just imagine that moment of the late 1960s, and you're seeing Eldridge, you're seeing Huey, you're seeing all of this black manhood and masculinity. Well, them white girls was getting moist. Okay.
Mm.
And Elaine Brown's joke is, people say that I became the head of the Black Panther Party because I was sleeping with Huey. She said, now, that's not true. She said, but I do take it as a compliment. She said, because do you know what that means? That means that I had the best pussy in the state of California. Because Huey fucked half of the white women in California and the Eldridge fucked the other half. Okay.
What?
And so, you
Wow.
look at some of those things that are said within the movement, and they in many ways will just make you laugh. But what people remember about the Panthers is not necessarily, what happened. And I pointed out the brother with the sharp features, the dark brother, William Lee Brink. That brother is actually going to hijack a plane. Okay. He hijacked the plane and took it to Cuba. Once again, the Panther connections with Fidel Castro. Where's Assata Oglubala Shakur at today? Cuba. Cuba has always been sort of a haven for Panthers. When Huey went on the run from a second murder trial, he went to Cuba. It's just what it is. When Eldridge initially escaped Ronald Reagan, where did he first go before he went to Algeria? He went to Cuba. And many of the Panthers laughed and they said, we knew Eldridge wasn't going to be in Cuba long because you got to work too hard to remain down there in Cuba. And Eldridge ain't trying to work very hard. But that's who the Panthers are. They're not this cultural nationalist, phrase mongering, hate whitey type of organization. They're fighting against capitalism. They're fighting against the prison industrial complex before we had those words to describe it. You know, remember Black Guerrilla Family, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson. These are affiliates of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. So in every way, you're talking about, I mean, come on. They got Marlon Brando on the stage.
Exactly.
Marlon Brando is doing rides with the Panthers when they do the Panther patrols. Come on.
Wow.
Come on. Who in the, I mean, think about this logically. Where'd the money come from? Because Black folk, by and large, one of our biggest gripes in the late 1960s, all the way through the 70s, I would argue, is poverty. What is it that caused Watts to explode? It's poverty. Y'all down there talking about getting votes down in Biloxi, Mississippi. We can already vote. We need jobs. We need job training programs and what have you. They're poor. So the question, and one could argue that even to this day, and we got to remember who is the living, and I love this brother, the living human embodiment. If you think about the Bay Area and you think about Oakland, the person who should pop up in your head is Marshawn Lynch. That's Oakland. We're not talking about a refined population with a bunch of money. So who paid for the Panthers? Where that money come from? Because they ain't have jobs. And if they did have jobs, they were menial jobs. Who was paying that money? Them white folk in Hollywood, Marlon Brando, in that crew. That's who the Panthers are. I mean, think about it. Eldridge Cleaver had this thing called the Black House. Eldridge was supported by wealthy white liberals. Eldridge was released early from prison because of the influence of wealthy white liberals. And one could argue that's probably one of the problems with the Republic of New Africa. They didn't have enough white folk around to say something about, how they were going to be treated.
Wow. Now, see, I thought because Eldridge was a Republican.
He becomes one now. Now, let's be fair to the brother. Eldridge becomes one. He becomes one, but that's later in his life. You know,
Um,
Eldridge is the go back and look at the speeches in the public feud between Eldridge and Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan is the governor of California. He's the
mhm.
one that ordered Eldridge to go back to prison. Eldridge had been released early because once again, those white liberals, they thought Eldridge was the second coming of Malcolm X.
Mm.
You know, Eldridge is still incarcerated when he wrote Soul on Ice. And they're like, look at this brother, you know, he got these writing skills and, you know, this, and that. And he goes to work for Ramparts magazine.
Mm.
Him and Reagan got into it. He hated Reagan. And Reagan for sure hated Eldridge. I have footage of Eldridge starting the speech with "fuck you, Ronnie baby." And you out here on parole? You think he ain't gonna send you back? Or you going back? Okay.
Mm.
He told Reagan in public. Now you tell me as a man how if you had the ability to put somebody in prison, and they stood up and they said, "You so soft, I would beat you to death with a marshmallow." Okay. Yeah, you're going back to prison. And on April 5th, the day after the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Eldridge leads a squad of Panthers who are, David Hilliard writes about this in his book. He leads a squad of Panthers that are trying to do a revenge hit on some officers.
Mm.
It goes wrong. Okay, they get ambushed, and Eldridge finds himself in a garage of these people's home, and they're gonna shoot tear gas in there, and they're firing bullets in there. And one of the bullets, unfortunately, hits a tear gas container, and it explodes. Lil Bobby Hutton, the first Panther to be killed, Lil Bobby Hutton is going to be killed in that. Okay,
Mm.
he's going to go out first, and Eldridge told him apparently to take all of his clothes off. And Lil Bobby Hutton's 16 years old. He's not going to do that. He's too shy to do that. So he comes out first. They want Eldridge. Okay, they're going to kill Eldridge. Okay.
Mm.
And Lil Bobby Hutton comes out, and one of the officers grabs him and tells him to run to a waiting patrol car. He follows his advice and he runs to, and that's when they cut him down. They killed him right there. When Eldridge comes out, Eldridge is booty butt naked, swinging. Okay, and that's the only reason that they didn't kill him, because he had no clothes on him at all. They couldn't say he had a concealed weapon. Yeah, but you have to really, that Eldridge is much different from the Eldridge who comes back from Algeria. The Eldridge that comes back from Algeria, you would almost argue that he had a lobotomy. You know, Eldridge quite simply says that I've lived in communist countries and socialist countries and what have you, and I am telling you that the best chance that Black folk have is right here in America. And one could make a significant argument for what it was he's saying. Eldridge was exiled to Algeria. You know, that was as a result of the shooting that led to Lil Bobby Hutton being killed, but also the fact that Eldridge doesn't have to come back. Eldridge comes back freely of his own will. And it's one of the wildest stories where he says that he was on the balcony of the condo or home that him and his wife, his then wife, Kathleen, were sharing at that time. And this is what the brother said. The brother said an angel came down and spoke to him and told him it is time for him to go back to America. And he says the angel guaranteed him that he would not go to prison if he went back. Now, this is a man that he's going to prison. It's what it is. Eldridge going in. There's no way. You couldn't even sit down and out of the greatest imagination you could ever imagine and come up with a scenario where he doesn't get sent back to prison. Eldridge comes back. They have a hearing, and a white guy that Eldridge has never met stands up because they put $1 million bond or something ridiculous like that on him. This white guy stood up in the back of the courtroom and said, God sent me here.
What?
And he said, if you give me, he needed like 4 hours. And he went and cashed in stocks or bonds or something crazy like that and put that up. And Eldridge did not go to prison.
Wow.
And Eldridge ends up, one of the Panthers tells a story where he says, Eldridge did a radio or television interview, and he didn't like the way they portrayed him. And the guy was like, the Panther was like, yeah, I agree with that, brother, because he felt that they had portrayed Eldridge too mildly, like a conservative. He said they go down there and they demand more time on the show so Eldridge could get some things straightened out. Eldridge's problem, his problem with the way they portrayed him was they made him appear to be too radical. And he said that the Eldridge that we remember, he's gone. And it's hard to discern, was Eldridge that smart that he outwitted these white folk to make sure he never went to prison? Because he never did. They never locked that brother up, not for those charges.
Wow. Yeah. So he won his court case?
He don't go back to prison. He wasn't, he didn't go back to prison. He was facing going back to prison because of the charges that he had accrued back when he was 20 years old or so. Eldridge is a different type of cat. Eldridge tried to be a serial rapist. He worked on, if you read Soul on Ice, he talks about that. He practiced rape. He was raping black women. And he had to, there comes a time when you have to answer this question. And the question that Eldridge needed to have answered was, is he that good of a rapist where he can stalk and hawk them down, rape them and not get caught? Or is it that the Oakland Police Department doesn't investigate the rapes of black women? And lo and behold, the first white woman that Negro raped, they caught him. So those were the charges that Eldridge had run from. The fact that Governor Reagan, he was governor then, Reagan had ordered his butt back to prison. And Eldridge said, I'm not going. And he fled like the night before he was to report.
So he was practicing raping black women so he could rape white women.
Yeah. That was going to be his method of revenge upon white society. So, yeah. Yeah, pick up go to any half price books. I guarantee you can find it. Soul on Ice.
Wow. Interesting. So the goal of the Republic of New Africa, land acquisition, reparations, and self-determination. Do you think that, well, before we get there, because I want to talk about the brothers a little bit. Now, were they blood brothers or just, black men brothers?
No, I think they were blood brothers. I told you, I think I told you last week that I have the funding slot of Imari Obadele, which is one of the highest honors that I could ever imagine. And I had the chance to meet Imari Obadele at a SCASI conference, Southern Conference of African American Studies Incorporated. He hosted us at his house.
And so what was he like?
He was older then. He was much older then. He just seemed like one of those old school revolutionary cats that kind of talk to you like, you don't know what you're talking about, youngster. Let me explain this to you. He was one of those types of cats, man.
Wow. Now, one of his quotes is, "We are not begging for civil rights. We are demanding human rights, and that includes the right to govern ourselves."
Who does that sound like?
To me, that's
Malcolm.
I would say,
Sounds like Malcolm. Remember Malcolm tried to bring the United States up for human rights violations? That's Malcolm. He's a disciple of Malcolm. But go ahead.
So, what was he in New York City with Malcolm, or was he a follower but not in New York City?
I think he was in New York City. I think that they had some significant connection to Malcolm. You look at some of the people who were involved with the Republic of New Africa. Queen Mother Moore, that's definitely New York City. The only other explanation I could have if he was not in New York City is quite simply Malcolm's renown was so large. And you know that you talk about 6 degrees of separation within the activist movement, especially amongst serious revolutionaries. You ain't far removed from whoever it is that you want to get in contact with.
Wow. And now, as you said, Queen Mother Moore, she is the one that came up with the name, the Republic of New Africa. And her thing was reparations. And one of her quotes is, "Reparations is not charity, it is justice. And justice delayed is justice denied."
Yeah. Can we go back to Obadele's? Could you read that again?
Sure. "We are not begging for civil rights. We are demanding human rights, and that includes the right to govern ourselves." Yeah.
I mean, that classic Black nationalism, revolutionary nationalists, that we should be in control of our communities, control of our destinies. And when you really think about it, there is arguably no more significant modeling of the principles that birthed this nation than that one right there. That's what Jefferson said. That's what Washington put military action to. This idea of being able to govern oneself. So an argument could be made that Black revolutionaries and revolutionaries in general are the truest Americans, or operating out of the truest spirit of America. Because in every way, we're renewing the idea of democracy by saying, let us in. And if you won't let us in, we will burn this motherfucker down. Is that not what those individuals that we refer to as the founding fathers actually did?
Right. Definitely. Now, when they talk about land acquisition to establish an independent Black majority nation state in 5 southern states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, the slogan, "Free the Land," became their central movement. Was that being, what's the word? Was that being immature in their thinking and planning of freeing those many states?
I don't think it's immature. I believe that it is unrealistic, because those types of statements and those types of movements, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it this way. He said, "We look like fools when we go out in public and announcing what it is that we're going to do before we have the power and the ability to do it." They're trying to rally people behind a slogan, behind an idea that no amount of slogan and propaganda is ever going to convince white folk to give Black folk land. The only way that you're going to get land is through military might or through economic might. Politics won't even get it to you. So I think it was naive. I think it was premature. Is it a proper step? Theoretically, it is. But you have so many other things, and this is one of my things about when I talk to the quote unquote revolutionary brothers, let's say you do succeed. Let's say they did free the land. How are you gonna get all these black folk to get on one accord?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? I mean, you look at this nation right now. America is in a political civil war
Mm-hmm.
that we've never seen before. Okay, outside of the actual U.S. Civil War. But how do you get black folk to come together, especially when you have a situation? Let's just talk about religiously.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to lead? The Nation of Islam, the Black Baptist Church, the Hebrew Israelites, the 5% Nation of Islam. There's an absence of ideological and intellectual consensus amongst black folk. We can't, first of all, we don't have a goal. So we have nothing to strive for intellectually. What are we looking at? What are we striving for? And ultimately what you end up with is a larger question and a larger concern of what's the ultimate goal. Some of us are talking about we're going to Cleveland. Others are saying we're going to Houston. Others are saying we're going to New Haven, Connecticut. We can't even agree on the destination. And a part of that flows directly from the fact that we're not educating ourselves.
Mm. Very, very interesting. Now, these brothers, the Obadele brothers, they were college educated, correct?
Yes.
Right. So I would think, going back to W.E. Du Bois with his talented 10th that are supposed to think and plan and act on behalf of the Black nation, that they would come up with the idea that we have no feasible way of actually taking the land like we're saying we're going to do. Did they not contend with, did they not think about that there's going to be a certain amount of military pushback when we're using the words that we're using and talking about, snatching these 7 states from America?
Well, in their defense, I'm not sure that, and I'm not questioning their seriousness in regards to doing this, but I don't think that black folk in general are able to conceive how frightening their words are to the white power structure and their determination to stamp out any even thought, any utterance of legitimate resistance. I don't think that you necessarily as a protester look at it that way. Consider for a moment, what is the reason why J. Edgar Hoover called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense the single greatest threat to the internal security of the nation?
Because you're feeding children.
It's the Free Breakfast for Children. Free Breakfast for Children program. He said, because what they're doing is they're planting a seed that will eventually sprout, and you're going to have revolutionaries, domestic revolutionaries in your midst. If you're the Panthers, if you're the Republic of New Africa, do you think that you're that significant that the U.S. government would take out of its enormous budget and really limitless budget, because they're definitely not afraid to go in the debt to squelch you? I don't believe that we feel that we have that significance. I don't believe that the Republic of New Africa had that significance. The Panthers didn't have that significance. However, the suppression of Black movements for liberation is illustrative to other Black folk of what's going to happen to them if they attempt anything along these lines. And it also reinvigorates, it's in many ways red meat for politically unsophisticated white folk who can't see beyond race.
And then their second goal, second goal is reparations, to demand reparations from the U.S. government for the injustices of slavery and racial discrimination. But we know reparations is a moral argument. And knowing that it's a moral argument, and I am one who do believe in reparations, I'm not saying I don't, but I look at it a little differently.
Why do you call it a moral argument?
Because it is. We're asking immoral people to do the right thing, and that's just not who they are. So it's a moral argument, and to base, one of your core principles on a moral argument, knowing that you're dealing with an enemy who doesn't have morals. Mm-hmm. I don't see the win in it that way. What was the win that they were thinking that they would be able to achieve by going at it that route?
I think that they're basing their argument and their request, not a demand. I'm one of those who believe that Black folk we never demand anything from white folk. We appeal to this sense of morality, of justice, and what have you. Mm-hmm. Their argument is sitting upon mounds and mounds of historical logic. We know what happened historically speaking, and they're utilizing that as trying to utilize it as a bully pulpit to get some things done. But there is no argument sufficient to get white folk to agree to pay for the sins of their fathers, to literally pay for the sins of their fathers. Consider the fact that Black folk whose suffering happened here in this nation don't receive a dime in reparations, whereas the Jews whose suffering and pain and struggle didn't even happen here are receiving money every year. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, you go up in there, boy, that'll make you cry. Like I told you before, I was a fellow up in there, So in many ways, you put it out there. You put it out there because it's a legitimate part of the call for the establishment of a new nation. But when you're looking at the grand scheme of the playing field, I don't give you a puncher's chance in regards to getting it done.
No, not at all. And so their last objective, which is self-determination, to secure the right of Black people to self-determine and to create a self-sufficient cooperative society based on the principles of Ujoma from Tanzania. What was their method? They think that because you want land and reparations, that it's going to produce the cooperative way for us. How did they? I don't see the putting it together.
Well, the argument is quite simply, if you're able to get some land and you're able to stand on your own in some way, why shouldn't you be able to build a fully functional and working society? The logic is spot on. However, you're not dealing with people who are, to be honest with you, in their right mind. Even if we were able to have the land and we were able to get hundreds of millions of dollars in reparations, let's be honest, with some of the behavior that we see coming from some Black folk, not the majority, not most of them, but a significant portion of our society, let's be clear on this. They're ungovernable.
Mm.
And when we talk about this idea of, and this takes us back to Karl Marx and Marxian theory, back to the Panthers being red, not black. One has to really question if the brothers and sisters on the block, the street people,
Mm-hmm.
can be brought into a new society in any substantial numbers.
Mm-mm.
Or do they have to go through a cleansing process,
Mm-hmm.
a reorienting process
Mm-hmm.
to get their minds together, to
Yep.
be able to even exist around civilized people?
Mm-hmm.
Because what do I'll tell you one way that you could get, they probably give you 10 southern states. If you agree to take all the ignorant ones in our midst and put them over there together, white folk they would, hey, hook it up. And that's not to deny, from whence their lack of education and refinement and cultural understanding and standards, where it emanates from. But that's, an issue. Are our people actually governable?
Mm-hmm.
Would they follow the directives of a black president? Or would they buck the system and say, well, you don't tell me what to do?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a reorienting process going on.
It has to. You're 1,000% correct. In our Mississippi agenda, we had a course that all the residents would have had to go through. Because the idea was, as you said, you're ungovernable at this point. And you're so much of a savage that you have to have re-education, retraining to get you to understand who you are, the knowledge of self, and to be able to do things differently. So that's what we were planning in doing these things. And Doc, as I began to learn more about what the Republic of New Africa was about and
Mhm.
saw how closely our objective of taking over.
So you saw some commonalities.
Yeah. And I was shocked because I'm
Mhm.
like, well, damn, y'all degreed folks, you should have known you wasn't going to just march down there and take over nothing. It ain't going to work that way. You have to use what the lay of the land allows you to use and manipulate it and turn it. That's why running for office and winning and getting in there and making those type of turns, you could actually bring that 7th state into reality. It's going to take you a little bit, but you can be moving those pieces and doing the re-education and all of that you needed to do. And I think if they would have started that then, instead of going the route that they went, they probably would have been more successful. So the next question, Doc, is looking at their 3 demands, how does that really form a comprehensive political and economical platform for Black liberation?
I would, there's a part of me that wants to say that it doesn't. And when you look at the bare bones of the Republic of New Africa, and this may be the answer to why they fell off so significantly from the thousands of members to having only 150. What is the cohesive thought beyond a loose, undefined Black liberation ethos that's bonding them together? You have all these different organizations and different leaders with different ideologies and what have you. Where's the consensus? Where's the agreement that this is the direction that we're going, that this is the proper way for us to go? It's very easy for you to stand up and to simply say, oh, well, we're going for liberation. We're going for Black. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
And beyond what that means, what does that look like? What does it look like in year 5, year 25, year 60, when you're dead and gone?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the questions that should be dealt with. Instead of dealing with those types of questions, we have a hodgepodge understanding of what revolution actually is, and what is the timetable for a revolution. How long does it take to execute a revolution? Okay. And make no mistake about it. As Malcolm put it in one of his speeches, a revolution is bloody. Are you willing and ready to die for this? Because these people that you're dealing with, they're going to do their best to kill you. And if they don't kill you, they're going to lock you away in a cage for so long that people will forget about you.
Now, Doc, their first president, as we talked earlier, was Robert F. Williams.
Robert F. Williams.
And for the life of me, I could not get the logic of that. Because one, during this time, he wasn't even in the U.S. He was over I think he was in China, right?
I don't know if he was in China.
I think he was in China.
I know he wasn't in the U.S.
No, he was. I think he was in China. I'm not sure if he spent all his time in China, but he was over there in China. And so when they made him the first president, that kind of racked my brain, because I'm like, he's not even here in America. What can he do for you? And then knowing that when he left, he came back to America.
You're correct. He was in China.
And then he came back to America. He quit from being president, dealt with his legal issues, charges dropped, all of that. Then he went to work for the University of Michigan as what I would call a snitch, giving them information on China, because China was a closed country. So they was using him for information to give them about China. To me, that's problematic. That's very, very problematic to me.
Yeah, but it's not unprecedented within the Black freedom struggle. When you're talking about the idea of name recognition.
Right.
He has name recognition. He is probably the most identifiable armed Black revolutionary alive at that moment. Everyone knows Robert F. Williams and what it is that he did. Radio Free Dixie and all those types of things. Being exiled himself in Cuba. We all know that story, and common people would know that story. Think about having a roster of Imari Obadele, Robert F. Williams, Queen Mother Moore. It gives the aura that these brothers and sisters getting ready to make it happen. And you don't know that. You don't know that Robert F. Williams got legal problems. That Robert F. Williams is going to ultimately have to go work for the white man because he needs a job. You don't know those types of things. Not sitting from the outside and looking in. So it's not unprecedented. You look at, and I always revert back to the Panthers. Huey's in prison when the Black Panther Party explodes in popularity. And many of the Panthers, many of the rank and file Panthers, the pro-lots, they never met Huey. He's sort of an abstract name and image that they struggle in, but they don't have a relationship with Huey. Kind of the same thing with Robert F. Williams. The name is there, and it would be very nice that he's going to be the one that leads us, but his ability and availability to lead you, that's questionable.
Now, it's very interesting, and I look at it like this. Well, he was overseas, being in a self-imposed exile. When he got back, he quit being the president to deal with legal issues, and I can understand that 1,000%. The Michigan governor refused to extradite him to North Carolina. the white people who was claiming at first that he kidnapped them flipped the story and was like, no, he actually gave us shelter. He actually, did good by us. So charges dropped. But instead of him saying, okay, well, my people still not free, let me work to do them, he didn't. He went back to, work for the university, getting the money to snitch on China, and just left our struggle and, turned to America and said, love me now, because now I love you. We friends, we can get along. To fuck with what else the rest of the issues is. There's a problem when it comes to serious Black leadership for the freedom of our people. I kind of come to it like most people think of it as a part-time gig or something that's just here and now. It's not something that they can feel in their mind that is going to be manifest. You're on mute, Doc. You must unmute yourself.
It doesn't pay though. And when you add it all up at the end, what type of retirement do revolutionaries have? What's their 401k?
Right.
What are they gonna eat at the end? How many times have we seen our Black luminaries end up in nursing homes and ain't even got nobody to come and visit them during those times? During their worst times and things like that. I think that all factors into it on the one hand, but I shy away from condemning people, kind of passing judgment on these people for these moments that from the outside appear as if they abandoned us. Look at the thing that's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell right now.
Okay.
What should be her priority? Telling the truth or getting out of their prison? Their 20-year sentence.
Getting out of prison.
What should have been Robert F. Williams' priority?
Of
Working
course,
with the white folk, or being extradited back down to North Carolina.
No, I agree with, you need to get a job to take care of yourself and your family. I don't have an issue with that. That's not because you need that Superman Clark Kent cloak, right? You need that cloak in order to be able to do what you do. I mean, I use it. This is why I went into pharmacy, so that I can do what I need to do for my family and do what needs to be done for the work. So we have to have that. But the thing about him is that once he went for the dollars, he said, "To hell with y'all. Y'all get along the best way you can." I did that for y'all already. I'm through with it.
But how do we really know that that's what happened?
Because that's what he did.
But
He didn't pick back up and say, look, let's move in this direction to try to get the stuff done. He didn't do that.
I mean, see, I take issue with that because we don't know that. We don't know that, and you yourself know that these ties that we have with each other as far as the movement, they don't die easily, and they may not be public. You have no idea of who's talking to who behind the scenes, who's willing to step forward and talk about things publicly versus those who I can't talk about that publicly, but I think that this is the way that the movement should go. Who knows what was going on behind in those private conversations? I just would like to think that Robert F. Williams was still having those types of conversations with his people, even if there is no record of him doing it.
Yeah, I think it's always good to try to give our people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
that is definitely good. The thing that I'm just looking at is like And the minister said, this is a post that we die on our post. And it's like, when it gets hard, when it gets really, really hard and difficult, when you, and look, him being charged and having to flee the country, I'm quite sure that took a lot out of him, out of his family. I'm quite sure it did. I am not making no light of that, because, that's a big thing in and of itself to sacrifice for our people.
Certainly.
Even though, I'm going to say this too now, some of the shit just didn't make sense from the beginning. Why you even would go that fucking route to do that shit don't make even common sense to me. But, heat of the moment, heat of the battle, people make decisions, right? So I'll give them that. I'll give them that. But
because this shit is happening in real time.
Exactly.
You're making life and death choices in real time.
Right. Exactly. So I'll give him that. But I think that once you've gotten back and you got everything squared away, and it ain't like you got to hide who you are. The University of Michigan know your background. They know your story. Everybody know what you about. They read your book. They understand. But
wait a minute. I take issue with the little part you put in there when you said you got everything squared away. Do you ever have everything squared away once they put their hands on you?
I think for him, since he didn't even, the governor of Michigan wouldn't even let them extradite him back to North Carolina, and the charges
at that time,
right? And then when the charges were dropped, because the white people who at first said that he kidnapped them, now they telling the truth that he actually saved them. Then you don't have no case, so the case goes away. You're a free man. You are who you are. Okay.
I disagree because as quickly as they were able to say what he did, what if one or two of them say, well, we were under duress and we said that, but that ain't really what happened. What really happened is he actually did kidnap us, and we're coming out with the truth now because we have protection. And that would be, those are the fickleness and the ability to change, and really the uncertainty to fix anything with the law if you're Black or if you're poor. Those are the overriding things for me. I sat up and I watched this excellent Netflix documentary about OJ and how OJ got off, and it's I think it's like 3 parts or something like that. Very, very interesting presentation of what happened with OJ. But in saying that, OJ had the money to be able to put great defense together. Robert L. Williams didn't. And so you need to kind of tread lightly in regards to some of those things.
It's just that I think, Doc, when we go and we have to, analyze what was done, and we see the record that's right there before us, and also giving them that shade or that mercy that they do, for what they did, it is required to be given, not taking any of that away, but looking at it for what it is, so that we can see what was wrong and then make the right turns, so we will go further than they went. I just think that it's imperative that we look and see, because, like, really, what were your accomplishments? Well, he didn't have any accomplishments, not as the president. He didn't, because he quit as soon as he got back here and had to do his legal issues, and didn't go back and say, okay, well, I'm gonna work with y'all and I'm gonna be your president part-time, or I'm going to establish this over here and work in this vein for Black liberation. We can look at these things and know because the history says that he just didn't do it.
But that's if the historical record is accurate and foolproof. And I just know that there are, it's if you go back and you look at the debut of Black Power, and I had this exchange with someone recently who told me I was incorrect in regards to it being Willie Mukasa Ricks who debuted the Black Power slogan in Greenwood. Brother was, oh no, brother, you're wrong. It was not Willie Ricks or whoever he's supposed to be. It was Stokely, and the person claimed that they were there. We embellish a story to. And fortunately, I carry my external hard drive everywhere with me. And I hooked my external hard drive up and I paused it when I clicked on who it was that was going to be talking. And the individual who was talking, his name was Stokely Carmichael. And Stokely Carmichael proceeds to say it was Willie Ricks who debuted the Black Power slogan. I was in jail the night before, and then I came out the next day and I stood up, and Ricks had already primed them to say, what do you want, Black Power? When do you want it now? And the brother acted like he still didn't want to believe it. And so that's kind of how I look at a lot of the historical record, that one account, all it takes is one account to be incorrect. And people run with it forever. It could be an understanding of, we can't talk about what Brother Robert Williams is doing. I don't know. There's a part of me that just hopes that those connections that he had didn't just die off 100%.
I want to look at what Tranquil said, because I think that may even play a bigger part of it. Tranquil says that that's one of those, the more you live, the more you understand situations.
Yes.
Is it, Doc, that maybe from the position of being president of New Africa, knowing the aims of what they're trying to go, that he said, understood, that shit just ain't gonna happen. The military gonna come in and do what they did all over again, because what you're actually is like you're actually declaring war on America, that you're actually trying to overthrow the government of America, which will bring that type of response. Therefore, understanding what you're talking about, that's just not going to happen.
I mean, there's a element of pie in the sky,
right,
associated with individuals who are talking about overthrowing the United States government,
right,
and they're talking about a physical. I'm a revolutionary nationalist, and even I know that ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Okay. I used to want to be a fighter pilot. I went and saw Top Gun, and they had me. Until them white folk gonna tell me that I don't see well enough for them to be able to let me fly one of their $100 million planes. I cry racism, but that's neither here nor there right now. However, there is not a military that has ever existed amongst mankind that could withstand what the United States government could do. We are the modern day Rome. We can touch you. Now there are some nations now that can punch back.
Right.
Okay. And that would create a tremendous fight. That would be a heavyweight battle now. But that's only within the last 20, 25 years, that somebody could even stand nose to nose with us. Okay. But when you're talking about Black folk being able to tangle with, and what we know is what's the number of the Raptor, F-28 or something like that. They probably got an F-62 somewhere that we don't know nothing about that could just destroy everything, you know. So Williams has seen some stuff that other people haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there's an element of naivete. I won't call it foolishness, but naivete that is associated with calls for the physical overthrowing of the United States government. I don't see that as being possible.
Mm. Now, their economic philosophy or economic concept, out of Tanzania, the Ujamaa concept, which has principles of self-reliance, cooperative economics, equality, and rejection of exploitation and rural development.
One of the Kwanzaa principles.
Are those principles good enough to, I don't know if they were trying to defeat capitalism or just, have their own economic system based on those principles? What do you think that they were trying to do what their economic principles by following this Tanzania the concept?
They're trying to bring back the idea of cooperative economics, of I am my brother's keeper, of the Communist Party USA had this beautiful slogan. It's one of the most beautiful economic slogans that one could ever dream of. And it is from each according to his own abilities, to each according to his own needs. I am my brother's keeper, that we're in this together. I'm going to make sure you good. You make sure I'm good. The problem with those types of economic theories is that you're dealing with capitalists. Americans are capitalists, and it's about the dollar. It's always about race, and it's always about money. And so you have people who have been raised in a nation that are hyper consumers, will spend their last dime on a purse, on a meal, and what have you. And you're going to ask them to tone that down or to temper that or lessen it. I don't see that as being realistic. I just don't. I think that people are after money, power, and respect, like the Locke said. Okay. That's a big ask, because you're asking people to separate themselves from what could be argued as America's foremost addiction to material things, materialism, and what have you.
Wow. So
well, let me say this. I think that a better course of action is not the abandonment, especially when you're talking about what's realistic in America. The better course of action is not an abandonment of capitalism. It is the adoption of a tamer capitalist philosophy, such as socially responsible individualism, that you're still able to go out and pursue money and to get money and what have you, but at the exact same time also understand that you are your brother's keeper. And if they're destitute and poor, they're going to be the ones that's going to put a gun in your mouth and steal your car, because they're that starved for material goods.
But I don't see how that could work, because in their philosophy, like it says, the idea was that the community as a whole would work together for collective good, and the fruits of their labor would be shared. It was a rejection of individualistic, profit-driven motives in favor of a community-first approach. That there's no way to tie or weave or partially weave capitalism in that. There's no way to do that. And then the
Well,
question
yeah, I mean,
would be,
you're correct. There's under their economic prescriptions, yeah, you can't put capitalism in there. What they're in many ways arguing for is a commune society. Okay, that everybody is going to be intertwined with each other. Nobody's going to starve. We're all going to share everything that it is that we have to share. What I'm saying is that ain't realistic.
okay.
Because quite simply, when you look at, let's say, the gentleman that owns the store, and we find this oftentimes when we're talking about these elementary Black economic principles. Many people believe that Black folk, if we just circulated our dollar amongst each other, would be better off. Let's say we do circulate our dollar amongst each other.
Okay.
And we all go to one particular store. Okay. We've allowed him to have a monopoly upon the community because he is a Black business. So now the question that I have is, what is his responsibility once he looks at his earnings for the month and he realizes that he earned $40,000? Is that his money?
I would say only part of it is, and then the rest he has an obligation to support the community.
What do you think he's going to say?
If he's a capitalist mindset, he gonna say, "Y'all did me good." I got mine, man. You better get yours some other kind of way.
There you go. I keep what was it? The lyric that Pac them had? I keep my mind on my money, money on my mind. So you're dealing with a lot of interlocking parts that are not so easily solved, because you're arguing that, well, the Republic of New Africa is asking for the wealthiest of them to not show many elements of their success, that any of the fat that you got left, you need to share that with the have-nots. I understand. I really do. Really do. But I don't see people who have been raised within capitalism. I believe capitalism is somewhere encoded in their DNA by now. To have them divorce themselves from that, I don't see that as being even probable.
It also says that within the Ujoma, they sought to prevent the development of a class system. They argue that every person should be a worker and that no one should live off the labor of others. He saw no place for landlords or capitalists in the Ujoma society. So let's just say that they were successful in taking Mississippi, right? How do you take and make their ideas a reality in Mississippi economically?
I have not an idea.
And I don't think they did either, to be honest.
Well, I mean, they haven't, you know, you can sit up and you can theorize about things all you want to, but until you have to make those decisions, and I'll venture to say that in this situation, 70-80% of those decisions being errors, then you got to pick yourself up and you got to try and reset, and you got to try and do it a different way. So I don't see that as, I don't think that revolution in the building of societies occur that way, where you come up with a blueprint and you're able to adhere to that blueprint. I mean, look at the American colonies. You know, you're talking about mercantile societies that are going to eventually turn into entrepreneurial, that are eventually going to turn into capitalist. It's a one has to have some dexterity and some flexibility to be able to, in every way, alter on the fly. Because if you're rigid, you're going to break. And in their case, one has to really say, well, when are y'all going to even start this? Because you don't have even the naked framework to be able to do this. Where are the people going to work at? What he's going to grow tomatoes, you going to grow onions, and y'all going to trade? Is that what we're talking about? And in many ways, there's so many unknowns, so many. I wish you could have got to the point where you could have tried it.
Exactly. You know, there. Would you say? Would it be fair to say that the U.S. government has a denial objective when it comes to Black people being self-determined? Would you say that they will fight against that at every turn?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So
I believe the United States government would fight against that at every single turn. Yeah.
So then, how do we establish, or should it be just understood that when you're talking about being self-determined, you determining where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to even be yourself, that you're, putting a red flag on and saying, here I am, come get me. How do you manage to be self-determined?
I think that your path towards self-determination is a quiet, silent worker bee path. One does not have to be public and boisterous and what have you when you begin to talk about, well, we're going to have voter registration. We're going to vote our own people into this. Black folk, a part of our problem is that we're announcing what it is that we intend to do before we have the ability to do those things.
Right.
You could elect your own school board. You don't know who y'all should vote for. You could elect your own mayor. Now, if you're talking about a state level, that's something different. But you could have these little local pockets where Black folk control the schools, they control the neighborhoods. And if you disagree with the way Black folk are voting, and of course, some Negro peons and some white folk are going to disagree with what a Black school board or a Black mayor or Black city council decides are the priorities for the city, because they're not going to be serving their interests immediately. Move around then. But what ends up happening is that our people are so disenchanted with the political process that we don't feel that it matters at all. So we don't participate. And that in many ways is going to guarantee that you're going to go through the same hell that your mama went through, that your daddy went through, that your grandparents went through.
Now, Doc, the brothers had a disagreement and broke apart. How detrimental is that? And what must we learn from that situation?
We Black folk got to learn how to be able to disagree with each other and not kill each other, not kill the movement and what have you. I don't care what arena that you're talking about. You're not going to always agree, and you're not always going to get your way. What is the larger goal? It's the equivalent of if we're taking a trip to Newark, New Jersey. We're going to Newark. We got to agree that we're going to Newark. Just like we got to agree that what we're looking for is Black liberation, and we have to define that Black liberation. But any fallout, any disagreement has got to be the equivalent of, will we stop and get gas at this rest area, or do you think we can make it to the next stop? Not, if you're not going to agree with me, then this whole thing is over. We shutting the movement down. That's a problem. That's the problem. Grow up. Grow up.
Mm.
Grow up, and in every way, understand that this isn't about the liberation and salvation of the Black nation.
Mhm.
And who told you that, number one, you would have a role as a leader when this nation is established? And
Mm.
number two, who told you was going to even be alive to see Black folk rise up? Just do your part.
Mm. I think that's very key. Just do your part.
Your part.
Because I see it too often, or I hear it too often, where you don't agree with this, so I'm just going to drop out and go do this and another. It's like you have no goddamn commitment to nothing.
To
God
nothing.
damn. Stay
To
the
nothing.
fucking course. Do your job. It's like, these niggas will, my God. Wow. When you talk to Brother Obadele, did he have any regrets?
We didn't talk about regrets. We were there at like I said, it was a Southern Conference for African American Studies Incorporated. We were there at a Black Studies conference, and it was a celebratory moment, that we recognized, number one, who he was. He talked about the Republic of New Africa very briefly, but it wasn't that vibe. It was a celebratory moment that we've been able to keep this thing going for like 20 years. And thank God that we were able to keep it going that long, because it's in a shambles now. Because many of those pillars of the movement, Howard Jones and what have you, they've gone by the wayside now.
Exactly. Yeah. Tough. So, Doc, in your closing remarks, considering the Republic of New Africa focus on land and self-determination and the successes and failures of Julius Nyamwa's Ujoma financial aspects, what is the most important lesson we can take from this movement as we seek to build self-sufficiency reality for our people today?
I think that we simply look at what it is that they tried to implement, and if it was successful or if it was not successful. We don't even look at it as if they were mistakes. We look at it as lessons that we could have. And some of the positive lessons that you have to, if you have any common sense, you have to understand that it's land. It's the right to be able to determine what happens on that land amongst a collective of individuals. Some may call that revolutionary thought for Black folk. I call it common sense for Black folk. And it's time for Black folk to, in many ways, cease the infighting, the backbiting, and come together, pursuing the ownership of land. It doesn't have to be, incorporate your own town. You don't have to be all boisterous about what it is that you gonna do, and these white motherfuckers, they ain't shit, and blah, that type of stuff. It's sensational. It's the equivalent of what I call mental masturbation. Feels good while you're doing it, but while you was doing it from beginning to the end, you knew you weren't trying to produce anything. You was just trying to feel good. So the biggest thing that we can learn is the land thing, and to understand that these were individuals who actually attempted to do it. And what happened to them? They were attacked, horrifically by the United States government. So if we're going to do something like this, let's go ahead and build it, but let's build it in a way that we ain't talking about it on their airwaves.
Definitely. And Doc, do you see, is there any organization that may be picking up the mantle of the Republic of New Africa and moving in that light? Do you see any?
No. I see a bunch of organizations who are espousing things politically in the public arena. about separation and things like that, but a significant movement of the use of a workable plan, I don't see that.
Definitely, definitely. Any other closing comments you want to add, Doc?
Just happy to be here, man. Just happy to be here. Look forward to this all week. Wish everyone well. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and building with us.
Definitely, definitely. And I want to welcome those who decided to make comments in the chat. Cherry Quill, peace and blessings. Thank you for coming and adding. Kent, thank you for coming and adding. Peace and blessings. Mayat, peace and blessings, Queen. Thank you for coming. Brother Donald, assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings, big bro. Glad you are here. Brother Willie Rivers, peace and blessings, big bro. Glad to see you. Emerald Modesty, peace and blessings, Queen. We're glad that you're here. Sheila Neal, peace and blessings, Queen. We are glad that you are here. We thank everybody for coming out and watching and sharing your input on this especially important topic, land liberation and legacy, the Republic of New Africa. I think we need to dig in. The Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party, looking at the different, because it's an organization, but it's seen in different lights by so many people, right? The integrationalists, what I like to call it, jumped over a lot of people's head, couldn't even see that, couldn't even realize that. And so I think it's very interesting, one, that so many people can have such a variance in their seeing and understanding what they was about, what the Black Panthers was about, what their goals were, where did they learn from? And so I think our next program on Sunday, let's jump into that. Let's jump into that and come across it and really put what the real record actually is out there, so people can see and have some type of understanding of what they were really trying to do, and whether they were going to be successful or not in actually getting there. So I think the Black Panthers would definitely be the next topic for Sunday.
All right, we're doing Sunday or Saturday?
Oh, Saturday, I'm talking about. Yes, Saturday. Not Sunday, Saturday. Saturday, next Saturday. So y'all heard? Next Saturday, we're going to be doing the Black Panther Party. Not the new Black Panther Party, but the Panther Party. Oh, Doc, I need you to clear up one thing for me or explain. You said Omar messed up for Black schools. What are you talking about?
Umar.
Yeah.
There's, the Black independent school movement. We have a Black independent school movement that is alive and well, that could in every way have used that money that was funneled into that Negro's pocket for no good reason. These people have buildings, they have structures already. And what I meant by that is quite simply, there's a inner yearning. I'll use my grandfather, the original James Thomas Jones Sr. He had two wives. I'm talking about his second wife, Fannie Jones, who was a custodian at a department store. And she was so desiring of helping me make it through college that it was incredible. The meager money that she made, she was willing to give a significant portion of that for me to get clothes, for me to get whatever it is that she thought I needed. It's that population of individuals. They're not well educated, but they know that there's something wrong within Black America, and they're willing to give whatever monies it is that they have at their disposal to that cause, that's who Umar tapped into. And these people gave money. And that money was not utilized for the purposes that he stated that it would be utilized for. And the most damaging thing about that is now we have a situation where those who were willing to sacrifice no longer have faith that if they give money that it's going to be utilized in the correct light. You know, one of the principles of being a revolutionary is that you don't take a piece of thread from the people, let alone some money. Because you understand that, and this is my thing, my definition of the future of a revolutionary. The revolutionary is a doomed man. Okay? He's either going to die on the battlefield trying to exact a revolution, or he's going to succeed in the revolution and no longer be needed by the people. What we're seeing with figures like Umar and other charismatic charlatans is quite simply individuals who are fleecing. They're grifters. They're fleecing the most loyal, dedicated parts of Black society, the salt of the earth type of people. And they should be taken to task, and he should be ashamed of himself, but he has no shame. He's a grifter. And because of his grift, there are going to be a lot of people, a lot of Black schools that maybe they're not going to shut down, but they could have utilized that money. Instead of sending that money to Umar, find an independent Black school within your state, if not your city or town, and give them a donation of $100. Give them a donation of something, because I guarantee you, especially when you're talking about Trump's big, beautiful bill, they could use that money, because grant money is becoming scarcer and scarcer. So that's what I meant, that he's done a hell of a job on the philanthropic efforts of Black folk to pad his own pockets.
Wow. Definitely. Woo, woo, woo. Wow. All righty. Thank you, Doc. And we want to thank everybody in the audience again for joining us. We ask you to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure you do that, so we help push our information out there into the what do they call, algorithm, however it go, so that the information continue to grow and continue to go. So as we always say, you kill the nigga in you, I'm gonna kill the nigga in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Love you, family. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
So you better get the message and get it straight. You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that. Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.